Number 4 is the new number. When I reviewed the E-M10 Mark III back in 2017, I said the same thing because it kickstarted the Mark III generation. We then saw the E-M5 Mark III and the E-M1 Mark III. So I'm pretty excited. Here it is, the first Olympus Mark IV generation, the Olympus OMD E-M10 Mark IV. Before I do a deep dive onto the new camera, let's have a look at the E-M10 series and what it means for Olympus. Many already know that this little awesome looking camera has been the biggest seller for Olympus, especially in Asian countries. But it means a lot more to Olympus than you may think. See, with many of my previous videos highlighting how passionate Olympus has been towards photography, and the E-M10 is and always will be a photographer's camera. Of course, over the years, Olympus has expanded and evolved, like many, into a much more capable photographic tech company. You heard that right. In today's digital world, a camera company isn't just about camera shutters, motors, and optical designs. They are like computer companies. Because at the heart of every great digital photographic camera, you need a capable sensor and processor, together with a great feature set that helps photographers achieving their shots. Let's not forget that the Mark III is not only my favorite pocket rocket entry-level micro four thirds camera, but also a favorite to many reviewers from around the world. This little guy is still being voted for being one of the best compact mirrorless camera in 2020. So now, seriously, can this beauty, the brand new Mark IV, continue the legacy crafted by his older brother and carry the torch flame for the next leg, being the king of entry-level camera? Let's find out. I know I'm a little late to the party on reviewing the OMD E-M10 Mark IV, but I want to have a genuine feel of this special camera before I can confidently say that it's a worthy successor to the very popular Mark III. To do that, I've taken the new E-M10 with me on my family trip to Lake District in the UK and spent a whole week using it for both photos and videos. And here's my finding. At first glance, it looks like the Mark III. Well, in fact, it looks like it hasn't changed at all since the very first E-M10 came out in 2014. But when you look closer, there you spot the differences. Two obvious changes are, well, first, the Mark IV badge is now on the front of the camera instead of the top plate like the Mark II and Mark III, which I think is pretty classy. And second is the grip. It's now noticeably chunkier and deeper, which makes it look and feel more professional. Speaking of professional, when I first picked up the Mark IV, it does feel very solid. While not heavy, it has some heft to it, which is something that I like about Olympus cameras, always feel quality. Like the Mark III, the Mark IV has a polycarbonate jumper over some metal bones to save weight. At 383 grams, including battery and memory cards, this thing is even lighter than the already featherweight 410 gram Mark III. Apart from appearance, well, at least on paper, the new E-M10 Mark IV has some updates that makes it a more complete camera in 2020. Well, let's have a look at the main updates. First, the Mark IV finally gets its own 20 megapixel sensor, which in resolution terms brings it in line with the rest of the OMD family. But unlike the rest of them, this 20 megapixel sensor has only contrast detect AF instead of the now known and loved hybrid AF, so it's more like the one in the Pen F. But Olympus didn't just give the Mark IV a brand new sensor, it also revamped the 121-point contrast detect AF with a new algorithm. Well, in fact, it's a direct plug-in from the latest flagship, the E-M1 Mark III. So even though it may not have the outright speed of the Pro brother, it does give the camera a more capable, more accurate and responsive AF than its predecessors. Because of the same AF algorithm, it means that the E-M10 Mark IV now supports enhanced face and eye detection, which is proven to be very effective, at least in single AF mode, and I can warrant that from my own experience in shooting the E-M1 Mark III over the last 6 months. So what's interesting though is that the continuous AF in video mode is working very well. All of a sudden, the Stone Age contrast detect AEF jittering back and forth hunting has almost disappeared. Despite a little slow to react to changes, it now locks onto the subject, whether it's focus point or using face detection. But as said, it's way better than the annoying focus hunt in the previous cameras, so it should do well for beginner vloggers like what I tried in Lake District. Olympus also gives the new E-M10 a new heart, the same TruePic 8 processor as its bigger brother, the E-M5 Mark III. Now everything feels more snappy and alive. Not only it gives the camera a speed bump in everything from AF speed to burst frame rate, you can now shoot more with the same BLH10 battery, 30 more photos to be precise at 360 shots compared to the 330 of the Mark III. On top of that, the E-M10 Mark IV has all the usual features that will satisfy all beginners and most amateur photographers. Similar to the current generations of pen cameras, it has a more easy to understand graphical interface that is self-explanatory and inviting to photographers. Both scenes and AP modes have pictures to show you exactly what you can achieve with a particular mode, so you can get in and get successful shots in no time. But of course, these modes are like assistant modes, so certain parameters are controlled by the genius inside the camera. It does a great job most of the time, but when you become more experienced, you want to take control of everything anyway. But these genius modes are what makes the E-M10 so appealing to begin with. For experienced Olympus shooters and die-hard E-M10 fans, you'll be pleased to learn about the return of silent shooting in the Mark IV, because it's now available in all modes rather than tucked within the AP silent mode on the Mark III. So is the brilliant 5-axis IBIS, which is now rated for 4.5 stop, half a stop better than the older brother too. You'll also be relieved to hear that the tilt screen is kept instead of the flippy screen, a feature that all photographers seem to love. Remember when I did the E-M10 Mark III end of term video? Many of you commented that Olympus should keep the tilt screen for photographers as they are more useful than the flip out screen. I guess Olympus heard that. I'm not against it because there are pros and cons in each system, just that now I prefer the flip out screen because it allows vertical low angle shooting and also easier for self-filming. Speaking of self-filming, what's new is that the new tilt screen does flip downward for selfies and vlogging, which is the same as the Pen EPL 9 and 10. While it may work for selfies, vlogging is a push, because if you use a vlogging support like the GorillaPods or something like that, the screen will be completely blocked. For those who are stepping up from smartphone photography, may find some of the new art filters useful too, especially with the ability to fine-tune the strength of each filter in camera. You can now get the look you want in only a couple of clicks. The E-M10 Mark IV also supports in-body RAW processing, which is handy, and when paired with the OiShare app via Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, you can share the photos you love directly to your social media accounts. My trip at Lake District has been very challenging for a camera. The weather was very unstable, but yeah, it's very good to test the camera sensor. So overall, I think it's pretty good. It resolves detail, it gives punchy color in a very Olympus fashion too. It does seem, however, has a little bit more noise at high ISO settings than the more expensive E-M5 Mark III and the E-M1 Mark III. In normal shooting environment, it's as good as any cameras on the market. I'm also very pleased to say that Olympus' new sensor has one of the best dynamic range across the board. From native ISO 200 to 1600, it's almost amongst the best in class. And I mean considering all beginner level cameras, including APS-C. So that is pretty awesome. But for any beginners, it's a good news, as this is a sensor that can produce high enough quality for you to grow as you get more experienced. Being an entry-level OMD also means that the E-M10 Mark IV is deliberately handicapped on several useful features that may appeal to more experienced users. As I said before, while the new AF algorithm is capable and more responsive in most cases, it's still not going to be as fast, capable or accurate in continuous AF situations due to the lack of face detection AF, so it's still best suited for still photography. Then its video feature set may be good enough to impress smartphone upgraders, but if you look closer, there is no mic input jack for better sound recording, while there's 4K videos, it's restricted to only 25 and 30p. And no flat or OM-Lock 400 flat profiles for serious coloring works. And finally, slow mode is reduced to 720p at 120 frames per second, just as its older Mark III brother, but still better than the Pen F640p in 4:3 format. There are other high-end features that are left out too, such as Olympus' latest Starry Sky AF, Live ND, high-res mode are all absent from the E-M10 Mark IV. Just as its older brothers, it's also not weather sealed, so it may not survive in stormy weather situations or having dual card slot for instant backup, which is something that a professional or more serious photographers would look for. So it certainly sounds like the latest E-M10 Mark IV lacks a lot of stuff, but the truth is that any Olympus OMD cameras have too many features to start with. If you strip away all the tech stuff and focus on pure photography, the E-M10 Mark IV is more capable and better than ever before. It's also a vastly superior photographic machine than many other entry-level cameras, with a capable sensor and rich feature set to match. If you are not fussed about some of the feature omissions that I mentioned earlier, nor an avid filmmaker or sports journalist, then you'll be rewarded with some of the most beautiful color photo renditions. And don't forget that the E-M10 Mark IV is also the lightest and most compact OMD cameras currently available, so it's definitely perfect for those who like to travel around and has enough advanced features to follow you in years to come. To me, it's an easy recommendation to any beginner to amateur photographer, as well as travelers and casual vloggers. So well done, Olympus. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed my take on the E-M10 Mark IV, and stay tuned for more videos later. You know what to do now. Thumb if you liked the video and sub if you loved it. Peace!